And joining us now on the line from Washington, D.C., Katty Kay, the BBC News anchor and co-author of Womenomics. We're happy to have you on TVO tonight, Katty. How are you?
Very well, Steve. Thanks for having me on the program.
Not at all. I want to start with a quote. I guess this is somewhat against type to do, but I'm not going to quote your book off the top. I want to quote something that Jason Zweig wrote in the Wall Street Journal's Intelligent Investor. Here's his quote. Finance professors have found that women's risk-adjusted returns beat those of men by an average of about 1 percentage point annually. In short, women trade less frequently, hold less volatile portfolios, and expect lower returns than men do. On the other hand, in the testosterone-poisoned sandbox of the male investor, the most important thing is beating the other guy. The second most important, bragging about it. The long term is somebody else's problem, and asking for advice is an admission of inferiority. Worrying about risk is for sissies. Leverage is good since it raises returns while the market goes up. Is it any wonder the male-dominated world of Wall Street has boomed and busted every few years for more than 2 centuries? And I guess where I want to start by asking you is, do you think that the current problems in the economy can be not necessarily all summed up, but certainly pointed to male thinking?
Well, you know, Steve, as the mother of 2 boys, I do know that when they are in the sandbox, it is definitely more testosterone infested. There are several reports that have come out recently suggesting that if there had been more women at the top positions in Wall Street, we may not have careered quite as headlong off that financial cliff as we did. Nicholas Kristof said this in the New York Times a while ago. It was the talk of the Davos Economic Forum this year, that if Lehman Brothers had been Lehman Brothers and sisters, we might not be in the mess we're in at the moment. Now, we're not suggesting that we want it to be just Lehman sisters, but there is something in the argument that the combination of male and female management styles is very good for companies' bottom line.
I hear what you're saying, and there is a lot of that out there right now, but it's also, I think, in the interests of equal time, fair to say, women legislators voted for lax regulations, and many women in charge of the household finances of homes across your country and mine, took on too much debt and didn't prevent bad financial decisions from being made. So I get the anecdotal evidence, but do you really want to take the next step and say, if women were more in charge, not so much of this would be happening?
What we can say, Steve, is that there are business studies out there. There are 3 of them that have been done in the United States. One by Pepperdine University, a 20-year survey of 215 Fortune 500 companies. Another one by Catalyst, a similar one of Fortune 500 companies. And one by the University of California at Davis, which all point to a trend in business, which is that businesses which employ more senior women make more money. Now, we're not saying that there is a definite causational effect, that it's because of those women in those companies that more profits are being generated. But there is something in the argument that companies that make smart decisions, and one of those smart decisions might just be opening the boardroom door to as much talent as possible, are going to see returns on those decisions. Now, think about it. Women have more graduate degrees, more undergraduate degrees. We control 83% of consumer purchases here in the United States, and I know the figure is similar up there in Canada as well. So we are better educated, we have different talent skills, and we have this power as consumers. That's giving us a lot of clout in the business world, clout many women don't know about, but which businesses are starting to see returns on.
Well, let me follow up on the issue of risk, because one of the things you've put forward is that women are somewhat less risk taking than men, and therefore these huge jumps off the cliff in terms of the economy of the world right now might not have happened had more women been in positions of authority. Isn't, however, risk-taking absolutely essential to moving forward, to economic progress, to having the kind of growth rates that we want to see in order to afford the kind of lifestyle we want to have? Isn't that all part of it?
It's all part of it to some extent. I mean, these are shades of grey, aren't they, Steve? That you have to think, how much risk do you want to take? And I think nobody would argue that over the last few years, financial institutions haven't taken too much risk, i.e. that they have over-leveraged themselves, that they didn't have the capital to support the positions that they were taking in the marketplace, that they saw this boom, they bought into the bubble, they thought that it would never end, whether it was in financial securities or in mortgages here in the United States, and look at the problems that's caused around the world. I mean, I think we can all accept, really, that too much risk has been taken in the last few years without the capital to support it. So you know, of course you have to take some risk in business. Anyone that opens a small business, and there are lots of women who are setting up small businesses here in the United States, you're taking a risk just by setting up your own business. Of course, if you take a mortgage, you're taking some kind of a risk. The question is, how much risk is healthy for the economy? And we're saying that what you want is the balance of that testosterone-fueled sandpit that you were talking about at the beginning of the interview, and the more cautious influences of women, that it's the yin and the yang, if you like, to get metaphorical on you, that produces the best results, that you can't just have men in the boardroom, you can't just have women either. Smart companies are recognizing this, and they're having both.
I can speak on behalf of all our viewers when I say I appreciate it when you get metaphorical on me, Katty, so thank you very much. Can I ask a question that comes from the fact that the government of the United States, the government of Canada, and the government of the province of Ontario are now in the car ownership business? We own auto assembly plants now. We know that women control consumer spending. We also now know that women buy more cars than men do. And I want to know whether you think the car companies and the market, I guess, writ large, understand that.
Oh, I think they're definitely cottoning onto this. In 2007, actually, it was for the first time that consumers here in America women consumers bought more cars than men. So we broke through that barrier just a couple of years ago. What happened then to car companies is they realized that actually women like their cars slightly differently. Ford did a huge survey of this and found that both men and women are quite specific about what they want from their cars, but women want slightly different things. We like more storage space, funny little inside interior things. We're less concerned with how the car looks on the outside. We're more concerned with convenience and safety features on the inside, for example. They even found that you could change the handles of the car so that a woman didn't chip her nails. Now, we reckon that when car companies are worried about our manicures, that gives us a certain amount of clout as consumers. So, you know, all of this, the car industry is just one, but in every single industry, from the design process to the marketing process to the sales force, if you are a woman consumer, you like to know that your business is being taken care of in a way that reflects your concerns. Who better to do that than a woman inside that corporation? This is why companies don't want to lose women. It's not because they're being philanthropic or PC about this. We are beyond those days. They're doing it because women are buying their products. And the people who understand women consumers best are women themselves. And it trickles down right from in the car industry, right from the design process to the sales floor. This means companies need to employ more women. Again, this is what we think makes womenomics exciting, is that women have this power in the marketplace as consumers in terms of our education, in terms of our talent, when a talent shortage is looming. And we can use that finally to make the workplace look the way we want to. And here's what we found, Claire and I found that was revolutionary when we started doing the business research. The companies that are letting us work the way we want, that are taking the clocks off the wall and saying it's okay to have more balance, it's okay to say you have family lives, they are seeing huge returns in terms of productivity. Productivity goes up like something like 40% at some of these companies when you let women and men work the way they want. This makes this a win-win. This is no longer a favor, flexibility. It's actually a business strategy.
Well, let's follow up on that with a little more flesh on the bone. Describe for us, and I don't know if I'm using the right term here, you can tell me, but describe for us what you might describe as a female-friendly workplace environment.
Well, I suppose I'd start by saying I'm not sure that it's female-friendly particularly.
That's what I wondered. Maybe that's
more
not the right
and more,
word.
Yeah, I mean, I think women are driving. You're absolutely right. Women of my age in their mid-40s are driving this push for more balance between work and career. In 2003, Harvard Business School released a study showing that professional women, lawyers, bankers, engineers, doctors, were leaving the workforce in greater numbers than they were joining it for the first time ever. There was a huge brain drain. It was being called the opt-out revolution. Women were saying that crunch between kids and career, when we face it, kids win. So the economy was losing all of these talented women. So women now, women who are mothers, particularly of my age, are pushing this desire for more balance in our lives. But if you look at the younger generation, Gen X and Y, those alphabet enders, there we find that actually the studies show men and women, equally almost, want balance in their lives. And they're starting to look at companies differently. They're investigating the kinds of companies that they might work for in terms of this balance issue. Am I going to get the kind of balance and the time I want for my family? But, you know, when we were writing this book, we both spoke to a lot of women all across America, but we decided it wasn't going to get us very far if we didn't speak to businesses as well. So we interviewed small and large companies and found surprising companies who have realized that flexibility works for them. Companies like Marriott Hotels, Capital One Finance, Sun Microsystems, Best Buy, for example. Best Buy is an extraordinary example. They implemented a whole new work program about 4 or 5 years ago called the results-only work environment. It sounds like a kind of a bit of a mouthful, but what they said was, we don't care where you work from. You can do it at 4 o'clock in the morning from Starbucks, you can do it at 3 in the afternoon from the office, you can leave at 2, start work again at 8. We just don't care. All we care about is how you perform, and we're going to measure your results. They were the ones that found that productivity shot up in the departments that implemented this program by an average of 40%. This makes sense. This makes sense for companies and for employees. We're going to sneak out the back door to go to our kids' play anyway. But if we have to sneak out, we're going to resent our bosses. If they let us go freely, we'll return the favor in terms of commitment and productivity.
Did you see the review by Sheila Kolhatkar in New York Magazine on your book?
Yeah.
Okay, let me read an excerpt here, and then we'll come out of this excerpt with a question. Here's what she says. Much of the advice on offer seems to be cloaked in a fog of unreality, one that might come from the vantage point of a television celebrity who can get away with what most of us can't. The gist of Claire Shipman, and Kay's argument is that because women are so valuable to companies, the time has come for them to start negotiating the terms of their jobs. Want to work 4 days a week so you can spend more time with your kids? Just march into your boss's office and say so, as Kay did. Does a promotion scare you because of the increase in hours and responsibility? Just say no. It worked for Shipman. Okay, question is, in these difficult economic times, how viable is it really to kind of put this new reality of the rules of the workplace, if you like, to your perspective or to your actual employer?
American companies don't want big layoffs. They want to keep that talent. They know there is this talent shortage looming. But most companies at the moment can't pay those bonuses. They can't give you a pay rise. But what they can give you is a bit more flexibility. They can give you an alternative working arrangement. Maybe you can suggest working from home 1 day a week. That can free up office space. If this is a time when you think you can afford to take something of a pay cut and do that 4-day week, you may find your company more receptive now than it was a year or two ago. So, I think in terms of, what was said in the New York Magazine, we realized that this was not going to be a book that was very useful if it was just Claire and my experiences. And that's why in the book we actually feature a dozen women from industries right across America. We spoke to a mechanical engineer in Detroit. We have somebody that works in car insurance in Plano, Texas, an accountant in Florida, a New York law partner in New York City. And some have people whose financial situation has allowed them to make a 4-day week and take that 80% pay with it. Some of them not. And we spoke to one woman who works in Detroit who really struggled just to get 4 hours off from her work schedule, but she managed to negotiate it with her bosses. And what she's done is actually she works from home in the evenings a little bit more. So, we're not saying that everybody has to take the pay cut and do the formal 4-day week. In fact, in many cases, we reckon you can fit a full-time job into a more flexible work arrangement. You can pick up at night. Technology is allowing us to do that. You can put the kids to bed and work from home a little bit more. You just have to be able to negotiate with your boss as a business strategy. You have to show them that this works for them. You have to carry on performing. You can't say, I want time off to go home and sit and watch movies. You've still got to be doing your job. It's just that technology is allowing us a much freer attitude to where and when we do those jobs from.
No, I take your point, but you have no doubt read this criticism, and I should give you an opportunity here to speak to it, which is that you and Claire are obviously two very high-profile, presumably very well-paid women in a in a wonderful situation. You've got good family situations, you have good professional situations, and you're not exactly typical of the kind of experiences women in your country and mine are enjoying, or perhaps the power that you can bring to the ask in asking your employers to come up with something more creative to suit your needs. Do you want to speak to that?
Well, I would love to say that the BBC was a very very high payer, but unfortunately it's a public broadcaster, so it's not particularly. But more to the point, I think, is that, what we found is that for a start in broadcasting, this is actually an industry where it's pretty hard to negotiate for flexible time, because as you know, it's all about how many minutes you spend on the air and how much face time you have on air. And so particularly Claire found working for ABC News that, this was a hard thing for her to achieve, to get this balance. These are not companies and industries where people are used to people saying, you know what, we need balance in our lives and we're not going to jump the whole time and we're not going to be on air and slaves to your organization 24 hours a day. But The women we have spoken to in our book are professional women. And sure, if you are poor in New York City or you are poor in New Delhi, you have much fewer options than educated professional women do. But what we are saying is that women with graduate degrees, and this was particularly college degrees, and we wanted to write this book for professional women because it came out of this Harvard study about the professional brain drain of women, they are in a stronger position than many of them realize. And we wanted to show women just how much power they have and just how valuable they are, because I think a lot of women don't realize it. A lot of women are in these jobs and they're working as lawyers and they're working as engineers and they're working as doctors. We have a woman who works in marketing for General Mills in Kansas. Unless you see the numbers, you don't really realize just how beneficial you are to the economy. And I think it's something in the female nature. We're not, as you said at the beginning of the interview, we're not the big braggers out there. We're not the ones who promote ourselves all the time. And I think for women to realize just how much power they have and just how valuable they are allows them to also see that they can start negotiating. And all the women we have spoken to and that we profile in our book, who are certainly not television personalities and television anchors, have found that they have managed in their companies to carve out lives that allowed them to work and have careers and to have children.
Understood. Katty Kay, great having you on the program tonight. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Steve.